Hello and welcome to another episode of Dogman Sasquatch Oklahoman Encounters. My name is Lance Hightower, one of the Cryptid brothers, and I'll be your host for this episode. The sun is out here and the skies are blue. Everyone's cleaning up after the tornado here in Tulsa. So I hope everything is going well in your neck of the woods with you and your family, wherever you may be. I want to get into discussing just a little bit of the last episode that we had with Roger out of North Carolina. He called into the show stating that he saw something, a cryptid, moving behind a tree, and it may have been what's been stalking his house, causing the harassment, the property damage, the beating on the home, the growling, the tapping, the scratching at the window. And we gave some recommendations, Wiley and I, that didn't always fit right in some of your minds there. Some of you it did. Let me just say, what our recommendations are may not be what your cup of tea is. We understand that. So if you commented either way, we appreciate you. We appreciate everybody for sharing and creating the buzz with this last episode and sharing our channel. We don't take lightly our recommendations. If we give recommendations, it's based on other facts that we know that the client has given us. We shared a lot of non-lethal recommendations to Roger as well, but I had to take some of that out because we talked about it at the very end with Roger in the interview, and I wanted to make the show not terribly long. So anyway, I want to appreciate you guys, and thank you so much for commenting either way on either side of the coin of your comments there. So today, with that being said, I want to recognize you, the subbers out there, for commenting and sharing our show. So we want to recognize Karen Blancourt Rocombe, Wendy Greer, Captain Schlepp, Grendel13, Sarah Jane Andrus, Phyllis Palmer, It's a Jaybird, Lasting Cause, 007X, Tony Convery, Cruiserweight 190, Cold War Fighter, Deutsch Hierarchy, Ford Demand 66, Jason Valance, and Blood on a Snowfield. Thank you guys so very much. We appreciate you. We appreciate you sharing to your friends, family, and co-worker, not only in the U.S., but across the world. Thank you so much. You're going to like this next episode that we have here. So this gentleman is quite unique. He has, let me back up here. This gentleman, he has listened. He's kept a story to him and his wife both have kept a story close to their hearts for a number of years, not sharing. He just kind of tucked it away. This gentleman is unique in the fact that he has an extensive professional background in training high-end large breed dogs, and he was quite, I hear a little thunder in the background. It's going to rain again here in Tulsa. He has quite an extensive background in canine behavior. And so he had such a unique story. There's two stories he had, two encounters. The first encounter, which you're going to hear, is a Dogman story. The second part we'll follow up is a personal encounter he had with two of his canines that you definitely won't want to miss this, folks. Either episode here. So anyway, this Dogman story, he had never shared it, him and his wife. They just tucked it away and never told anybody before. And they were moving to they were in California, and they were moving to a new home addition. They were one of the first homes in this home addition, and they had a lot of job responsibilities with family and their work. And out of confidentiality, I told him that I would not use his name because of his occupation. And in doing so, they were leaving early in the morning. Well, one particular morning, they left, and as they were trying to get on a major highway, they hit something coming out of their home addition. It ran extremely fast in front of the car. He had no time to stop, so he hit this thing. He said approximately about 35 miles an hour. Well, he came to a stop. He told his wife he was going to get out and take a look at what he had hit. She said, "Don't get out." He said, "I'll be okay. Just stay right here. I'll take a look at what it was." And he said, "Lance, with my extensive background in canine training, we love dogs. We adore dogs. Had I hit a dog, I would have surely called somebody to help us to, hitting someone's pet is extremely troubling to me, so I would have called quickly somebody." He said, "But when I got out of the driver's side and my wife was sitting up front on the passenger, and as I got out, and I rounded the car. The headlights of my car shone upon something that I've never seen before. It was troublesome. I backed up a little bit more, and I realized what I'd hit wasn't a dog. He said, Lance, I have big dogs I've trained. I've had very large dogs, family dogs that we've owned. Nothing compares to the size of this thing. Nothing about it resembled what I would say is domesticated canine. Everything about this was wild, bulky. It had like a lion's mane. It had teeth that looked like it came out of a Hollywood horror movie. He said, I can't even begin to describe the fright I had in seeing this thing. I backed up. I could see its teeth were unusually big and sharp, and there was a pool of blood forming underneath its mouth, and its eyes were open, but yet it wasn't moving. I could still see the eye color, he said, and I can describe some features. He said, we kept that close to us. We got in. My wife asked what it was. I said, I don't know. We got in. I backed up. I drove around it, and I said, if it's still there when we get back home, we'll take a closer look. Of course, when he got back, it was gone. But a dried pool of blood where it was at was the only thing that remained of any evidence that they had hit anything. So to this day, they kept it quiet. They felt led, or he felt led, based on really how we share on the show and how we relate to people on the show. The great thing is with some of these cryptid shows is that to each their own. Everybody's going to connect with somebody in their voice, how they go about sharing. So he felt connected to us in listening to some of the previous episodes, so he decided to share, and I'm so glad he did. This is a great guy, rich family history, and so we really hit it off well, and I enjoyed listening to him and what he had to say. So we're also going to follow up with part 2 of the next episode with this gentleman out of California. So let's go ahead and go right to it when he was sharing with me what he and his wife hit this dogman creature some years ago, one early morning, coming out of their new home addition in California.
Well, I'm in the real estate industry here in Southern California, and I've been doing it a long time, about 15 years on the retail side. I have partners that also we buy and sell and rehabilitate projects here throughout Southern California, mostly, and put them back on the market and then sell them. So I guess you could call that we're in the flipping business as well. But this first incident actually occurred in 1996, and it was in the Kern County area. I'm not from there. I'm from the Southern California area, but they consider that to be more like the Central California area up there. And we had a new house built, and we moved in, and my wife and I, my father-in-law, we moved Dad in with us at age 83. And, I was raised old-fashioned. I'm the oldest of 4 kids. My dad was military. I was number 1 son. And not as bad as the great Santini movie with Robert Duvall, but I was his eldest, and I pretty much took the brunt of it. And we bounced around quite a bit. Dad was from Iowa, joined the military at 17 years old to see the world and change his life, and he did both of those things. And we ended up here in California in 1971 and got into school, and pretty much the rest is history. I was raised out here, and I grew up fishing and on all the beaches here in Southern California, and always had guns in the house. And Dad was old school and taught us old-fashioned respect, and so to have firearms in the house was just a way of life for us. It's not a big deal. I really couldn't understand the families in Southern California that didn't have any, and I came to understand that a little bit different living out here, and the being this close to Hollywood and Beverly Hills and just an hour outside of Los Angeles. things a little bit different than they do in the Midwest and pretty much the rest of the country. It's kind of a little bit different lifestyle here, but you get used to it. But my values and morals are old-fashioned and from the Bible Belt. Mom is from the East Coast, and we had a good life. We didn't have a lot of money. Parents had 4 children, and they did the best they could. Dad worked hard, had 2 jobs for most of probably the first 15 years of my life, trying to make ends meet. He did whatever it took to take care of his family, and I kind of grew up, with the same values. And anyway, my wife and I, we ended up having a new home built, and we moved up there, and I had some business to take care of down here. It was about a 2-hour drive. We had to get up at like 3 o'clock in the morning to make the trip, and got the car warmed up, and I always had animals, and I recognize animals. I've hunted and fished, like I said, almost all my life. We've never not had dogs in our family, and we actually had a couple of dogs at the time. One was a Chow Chow, and so we were very familiar with especially canines. I did some work with the canine department here in the local police department. I had friends that were police officers, and they needed some extra help, and I volunteered, and I ended up getting into that quite extensively in the Schützen program for the police dog training. And so I've been around, some pretty hardcore canines in my days, and ended up getting one myself, actually, a German Rottweiler pup. And so it wasn't something that was strange to me to be around some pretty vicious canines. Thank goodness they were on our side, but I was quite used to it, and not a problem. A lot of times I was actually the guy out there in the suit that was used as the dummy for the dogs to attack.
Oh.
And so, yeah, so I was used to that. It's a 3-pronged program: protection, obedience, and tracking. And all the dogs that go into a canine handler's program have to pass the Schützen program and become a Schützen 3 dog. And so it's an awesome program. I was proud to be part of it. I did it for about 3 or 4 years, and so that's kind of the backdrop. And some of it will make more sense when I tell you the rest of the story here. But my wife and I got up early that morning. We were ready to go. I got the car started, and we jumped in, and off we went. We had about a 2-hour drive ahead of us, and we lived in this brand new subdivision. There was only scattered homes in there. It was a big subdivision, brand new. There was probably, I'm gonna guess, maybe 20 homes in this whole subdivision that were actually built. Some were in the middle of being built, and some were just had the foundations laid. But we had bought one of the first ones in this subdivision, and so we were headed towards the freeway, and headed out of the subdivision, and linking up to the road that would take us straight to the freeway, so we could get on about our trip. And I was probably going about 35 miles an hour, roughly, and my wife was, in the passenger seat next to me in the front. And from the right-hand side, this animal just came flying out of nowhere from my right-hand side across the street. And I never even had a chance to really hit my brakes. It happened so quick. And I hit it square on and knocked it down. I didn't hear any noise whatsoever. I put the car in park, and I told my wife, don't get out whatever you do, don't get out. I don't know what this is. It just happened so quick. I just saw teeth and some ears and in the headlight, and then it was over. And so I put the car in park, and I asked her not to get out of the car. It was, in the middle of the night. It's about 3:30 in the morning. It's cold, and there's nobody out. And we're out in the middle of nowhere. There's not a whole lot happening yet because it was a brand new division, and there wasn't, the stores were just coming in. They were going to build a Costco up there and a Walmart, and they hadn't even started yet. Okay. So it was quite open. But this animal was traveling so fast that I didn't have time to react. And, of course, I felt bad. I've got a background with dogs, and I thought I'll just jump out and see if I can see what's going on here. And so I came around the front, and I had my headlights on, and I looked at this animal, and I took a couple steps back. I didn't have a firearm with me, but I felt like I should have when I saw what it was. And to this day, honestly, Lance, I still don't know what it was, but it was not a dog. It looked to me the closest thing that resembles it is like a wild hyena. It had a huge set of teeth. It had a snout, but it wasn't elongated like a German Shepherd. It was shorter, kind of like a Rottweiler almost.
Okay.
And it had pointed ears and a really, really thick mane, if you will. Not a long mane like a lion, but it was tight, but it was definitely a mane. It started like at his face and kind of went back and stopped about mid-shoulder, and it looked like it went down around like halfway up his chest. And then it went to a fairly tight coat, not real bushy. And I have to be honest, I was intimidated by this animal. I didn't want to stay out there too long because I didn't know if it was actually dead, and I didn't want to get any closer. Mm-hmm. Had I recognized it as a dog, a regular dog, I would have probably called a police officer, or I would have called somebody. I would have reported it when I got down to my destination, at least. And I felt so uneasy and so uncomfortable about this that I didn't. And my wife and I got back in the car, and my wife said to me, "What is it? What is it, honey?" And I said, "I don't know, but it's not a dog." She goes, "What do you mean it's not a dog? It's a good-sized animal." I said, "It is a good-sized animal, babe, but it's not a dog. And it's not moving." And there was blood coming out of it. I was not going to get any closer to check it, to see if it was still alive. And it was heavily muscled. It was lightning fast, and it looked to me that it was basically designed to do one thing, and that's kill. It was a scary-looking animal. It was thick and strong and very intimidating. And you're talking to I'm a guy that's been around 150, 200-pound German Rottweilers that are, canine dogs, and German Shepherds that are, trained to kill. And that they don't scare me. And it was the uneasy feeling. It was that I couldn't really put my finger on it. It was a feeling that I felt vulnerable. I felt very vulnerable at that point. And like the best thing I could do is get back in the car and get away from this animal in case it wasn't dead. So that's exactly what I did. I got back in the car, I backed up, I drove around it, and went on about my way. And I was shook up. I'm 6'1", I weigh 230 pounds. I'm tall, strapping Norwegian, and I'm not afraid of much. And this animal, I think probably because I couldn't put my finger on what it was, and it looked so vicious. It had like a yellow, amber, greenish eyes that like glowed because my headlights were, they were right up in this thing's face, and it was moving when I left. And my wife and I, we were both shook up to the point where it was a long, quiet drive. We didn't talk about it. We didn't talk at all. We just went on about our drive, and I stopped and got a cup of coffee, and then got back on the road and went on about my day. Got down there, took care of business, and when we came home that same day, later that day, we drove, of course, on the same road to get back, and we were both kind of anxious to take a look at this thing in the daylight. And it wasn't there. The pool of blood was there, but the animal was not there. There was no sign of it. There was no hair left. And the coat on this thing, Lance, the other thing that was kind of strange to me was it had like a multicolored coat. It wasn't like a solid color of anything.
Huh.
It had some grayish, some brown, and some black, like all kind of mixed in.
Would you call it a calico color?
I would. That would be a very good description.
If you compare that to, say, a coyote's color, what would it be similar?
Kind of. Only it was way. I know what a coyote is.
Right.
I've seen them for many, many years. This thing was probably, I'm going to say, 3 or 4 coyotes or more. No problem.
In size?
In size.
Whoa. That's big.
Oh, yeah.
That's big.
Yeah. It cracked the fender. I didn't have I have a fiberglass fender like most cars these days, but it's a mid-size sedan, and it cracked the fender and the grill of my car. But like I said, I was only doing about 35 when I hit it, but I hit it pretty square, and I would have thought it did more damage to the car, but I was fortunate that it didn't. But the strangest thing of it all was, when we drove up, we stopped right at that spot, coming home on the opposite side of the street this time, and looked at this pool of blood, dry pool of blood there. It was probably, I don't know, a foot, maybe 18 inches across, something like that. And so I wasn't dreaming.
Exactly.
I wasn't dreaming. To be honest, it happened so fast, and it was so strange and so odd that it almost felt like it didn't. Like, if my wife wouldn't have been there, I would have been tripping that maybe it didn't happen. Except that it did. Because on the way home, we stopped at the exact spot, and there was a big pool of dry blood there. And my wife looked at me, and I looked at her, and she goes, "Babe, what was that?" I said, "Babe, I have no idea, but it was not a dog."
Tell me a little bit about the description of the... Well, I guess one thing, and we had discussed this prior to this interview, is that maybe it was just stunned. I mean, maybe you just knocked it out and it came to. Who knows?
I believe it had the power or the strength based on what I saw body-wise and the muscle, and the look on this thing's face. It didn't really look dead to me, but it wasn't moving. It gave me a really, really eerie feeling. I mean, I don't know if you've ever hit a regular dog before. And usually they let out a yelp and you get out. I've seen one of my neighbors hit one of our neighbor's dogs. It was the German Shepherd. And he didn't hit him going very fast. He was leaving the neighborhood and he clipped him because the dog was chasing his front tire. As he rode by his house, and the dog got out a little bit in front of him, and he smacked him, probably doing about 25, and this dog, did a couple of 360s, and ended up laying down in the street and struggled to get up, but he was yelping and screaming the whole time. And that's normal. You expect that. This animal never made a sound, Lance. Nothing.
That's bizarre.
Nothing.
That is so bizarre.
Really bizarre. Really bizarre. No. And I felt like, honestly, when I was standing, I didn't approach it and stand over it. I stood from a distance because it spooked me. Once I got a look at it and I saw the teeth on this thing, I said, man, this animal was only designed to do one thing. I go, good Lord, I mean, this thing would kill anything in its path if it wanted to. I don't know. A Rottweiler couldn't stop this thing.
Describe the teeth to me, if you would.
They looked a little bit in the light, in the dark. They looked thick and very strong. They look thicker than my dog's teeth. I know what a regular. I mean, I have a Chow Chow. I had a male and a female, and my male Chow was a big dog, and this dog was this creature, this animal was two of him.
Wow.
And yeah, and that's why I didn't want to stick around. Because I was afraid that possibly this thing wasn't dead, and if it gets up, I figured it's gonna come after me.
Exactly.
And I had no way to protect myself. I felt very vulnerable, and I didn't even want to admit it to my wife that I got scared. I was like, my wife knows I don't scare easy. I'm raised old school, old fashioned. I got a Smith & Wesson 357 mag in my nightstand. I got a 12 gauge. I got plenty. And nobody's fool enough to come up in my house anyway. Even my own boys, raising my two sons and my daughter too. But our sons, they're young bucks and they're going out with their girlfriends in high school and stuff. And they knew, don't come in the front door at 2:00 in the morning without waking me up first. They would come around, their instructions were to come around the back, knock on my master bedroom window, and say, Dad, it's me, don't shoot. So, I'm a father of 3. I'm 59 years old now, and we've got 12 grandchildren. I'm a godfather or godparents of 5. So the Lord has blessed our family, and we didn't get those children by marriage, by marrying into it. We actually had our children young and raised them up, and the boys saw fit to follow in the family's footsteps, kind of, and get married young and married their high school sweethearts and got busy like we did, like my dad did, and like my grandpa did. So that's kind of the way we roll in our family, and we're old school and we're old fashioned, and we tell the truth, and we have good morals and values. And this didn't this animal didn't fit into anything I knew. And so it made me feel very uneasy because I didn't have any answers. And so it made me question. I'm starting to think about all the dogs that I've seen, all the places I've gone for the police training. What's the biggest, baddest dog I've ever seen? It wouldn't compare to this thing. And I'm like, this is not a domestic animal. This is a wild creature. The fangs on it were, I noticed at the front, I can see it, this happened in 96, Lance. So we're talking, about 21 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And I've got a picture in my head of this thing still, like I saw it yesterday. Because when something makes an imprint on you to that degree, you typically, you don't forget it.
I'm sure you don't. I'm sure you don't.
And I never shared this story, like I told you the first time. I've never shared this story with anybody except you and my wife, because she was there. And I thought about that after you and I talked, and I did feel better about finally sharing it because, quite frankly, I was quite humbled by it, and didn't have a way to explain myself why I felt so uneasy or so intimidated by this animal. And if somebody would have told me, if a police officer would have rolled up and said, "Sir, you just hit a crazed hyena that just escaped from a traveling zoo here," I would have believed him.
Wow.
I would have believed him. Because this thing did not fit into creatures that I know. So, the fangs on it were, the canines were big. And they were curved, somewhat curved. And
curved back?
Yeah, curved back a little bit,
On both upper and lower?
Yeah, it had upper. I really, really remember the upper. The mouth was kind of ajar when it was laying on the ground there in front of me. And, I wasn't going to get any closer. I didn't feel comfortable enough to do that. I really wanted to, but my common sense and my intuition told me, don't do it. Don't go any closer. Don't mess with this thing. This is way out of my realm of knowledge and comfort zone. It was put me out of my comfort zone. And my family all knows me well, and they know I'm not afraid of really anything. If it's something that I know when I'm facing.
Exactly. If it made two of your chow, are you saying, and I'm only estimating, you tell me, do you think it was in the neighborhood of about 350 pounds?
I figured it was probably 250, all of 250, and it could have gone higher.
Okay.
250, maybe 300, maybe it wasn't full grown. I was thinking that possibly it was, whatever this thing was, it was possibly young. Really? I don't think if it was mature, it would have made such a maybe a foolish mistake.
Ah, interesting. Okay.
Because this thing could have seen me a long ways away. It was pitch black, and I had my headlights on. I was the only one out there. Why did this thing run in front of me? Why didn't it just sit there and wait for me to go by?
Good question.
I used to wrestle with that. Like, Lord, why did I have to hit this animal? I mean, I don't understand, and I felt bad for driving away, honestly, because I love dogs, but this is nothing like the dogs I know, and I wasn't comfortable, and I sure as heck didn't want to put my wife in any kind of harm's way.
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't either.
And I already felt, Lance, that I had compromised our safety already just getting out of the car to go look at it. I didn't need to do that. I could have stayed in my car and drove around it and forgot about it. But because of the person that I am, and I'm a dog lover, I felt, it was the responsible thing to do, to get out and at least see if I could offer some kind of help.
Exactly.
But once I got out around my car door and made the pass around the front left side of the car, the driver's side, and I got to the front, and I saw it, that's when I took a couple steps back and said, oh, no, I'm not getting any closer to this thing. I don't even know what this is.
Wow.
And I still, to this day, I don't know what I hit. I don't know what I hit.
What do you think, as far as the height at the shoulders, at the wither, what do you think the height would be? I know it was fast when it went across, but if it was on all fours, just pure guesstimation here, but do you think it would have gone 4 feet at the shoulder?
I would feel comfortable probably saying 3 feet.
3 feet, okay.
Yeah, like I said, I kind of, my gut feeling was that this thing was a juvenile. It was fairly young.
Oh, wow.
I think this thing could have been much bigger. That's what I felt.
Uh-huh.
And, for an animal that had these kinds of weapons and this kind of body, I also would have assumed or expected that it would also have the brains to match. And my thought process was, maybe he was chasing something, maybe he saw something. There was a lot of rabbits out there. There were kit foxes. Because they were building, it was kicking up a lot of animals' dens. And so maybe this thing came in to feed in the area at night because there was a lot of construction going on, and it was disrupting the environment. There's no doubt about that. And I was thinking that maybe he was in hot pursuit of something, and he was so locked on his target that it didn't matter to him, that he thought he was fast enough possibly to get past me. And, of course, that didn't happen, but a lot of things have gone through my mind over the years, Lance, to try to make sense of it. There was no reason for that animal to run in front of me. It was a wide open space.
I like your idea, though. I mean, I really do, because of the lack of experience, or being potentially a juvenile, that it was just a bad decision on its part. In my mind, it's kind of correlating deer. You get a deer that's been eyes over the years, and they'll time out traffic. And not always does it work, but it's your young deer that get hit a lot. When it was lying there, could you take a look? I know you saw the head and the eyes. What about the paw or any of the upper arm or lower extremity features? Did you see anything, claws or the feet?
I didn't see any protruding claws. I took a gaze at that just to see, and I didn't see anything external, like visible, which was, I felt that was kind of odd. To me, I think it must have had claws, because it only made sense that this thing would have a gnarly set of claws to match the rest of it. It only made sense to me that, if I could got a little closer and I felt more at ease and I knew it was actually really dead, I might have gone and maybe turned it over. But my wife would have had a fit, and not knowing if it was really dead. And then when we came home and found it had vanished, then I had that sick feeling in my stomach, like, wow, what if I would have done what I naturally would have gone to inspect this animal and to see if it was okay, if I could help it at all, and it would have got up and jumped on me. There is nothing nobody could do.
No.
And I would have had to sit in the car and watch.
Oh, gosh. I don't even want to think about that.
Yeah, so, trust me, I've thought about all that. And, you got to think on your feet sometimes and make, good decisions under pressure. And I've always been able to do those kinds of things. And sometimes when things are actually more serious, you find that calm center, because we've had plenty of experiences in life at our age to know how to handle those kind of situations as calmly as possible. But I didn't want my wife to really see how much I was shook up, to be honest with you, man to man. I was shook up.
Well, I think we just don't want our wives in general, we don't want to shake them up, so we try to cover it up. And I've done that a couple times as to not make her too fearful about the circumstance. So when you got out, how much of it could she see? When you backed up and you finally got in the car and you backed up, did you go around the passenger side to get around this creature, or did you go around your side, the driver's side, to go around it? And did she see it, I guess?
I believe I went to the right side of it, which would have been the passenger side as we passed it. But once my lights were off of it, my direct headlights, there was no light available out there. It's pitch black. And my wife wanted nothing more than to be away from that as far as possible.
Okay.
Once she saw me, come back in the car and the look on my face, and she could tell, even without me being, completely honest with her, she could tell that something shook my husband up, and it's got to be pretty bad out there. Let's get out of here.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So she didn't even want to see it. She didn't want to look at it. She just wanted to get out of there because she could tell that I was out of my comfort zone, and I didn't talk about it. I didn't want to talk about it. I felt bad, but at the same time, I felt relieved that it was in our rearview mirror. We're gone, and now. I didn't have to worry about it. It wasn't a threat anymore at that point, and we were on our way. But like I said, when we came home later that same day, and that animal was gone, my wife and I just looked at each other, and she just looked at me, and she just said, "What was that thing?" I said, "Dave, I have no idea. I don't know. But it was built to kill. I can tell you that."
And how far from where that happened to where you were building your home, how far of a distance was that?
Probably half a mile.
Wow. Too close for comfort.
Half a mile?
Too close for comfort.
Yep. Too close for comfort. Believe me, I already had guns in my house, so that was a given, but I was more watchful after that happened. We actually ended up selling that house about 3 years later. We didn't stay there for family reasons. We ended up moving back to where we are now. And I made a few dollars on the property. It was on a quarter acre. It was a really nice home, and I didn't spare any expense on it, and it came out really nice. And so once I put it back on the market, it sold actually rather quickly, and we just moved back down here and bought another house as close as we could afford, within striking distance of the ocean, and we've been there ever since. So I'm glad that I got a chance to talk to you about it, Lance, and I don't know what that animal was. I still don't know. But like I said, I've looked online and done some Google searches and some image searches, and really the only thing I could really come up with that's kind of close to it would be like a cross between like a huge timber wolf and a hyena.
Well,
if you put the two of them in a machine, and an animal came out the other end, this thing would be a pretty close match.
You're not too far off in describing what a lot of in discussing these encounters with these dog-like creatures. We're just going to call them right now Dogman, just for this conversation. But I have one gentleman from Tennessee that he said he saw it galloping. He said it galloped like a gorilla. How it wasn't like a normal run like a dog. It was, you could physically tell it was pulling its upper body forward with because its upper body was so large compared to the rear end. And I said, and we both said it together, like a hyena. And he said, yes, the lower end is sloped down, and the upper body is so big it has like a hump. And I said, like a buffalo hump. He said, yes, exactly. He said that's where the mane was at. It had a mane around on the outer perimeter of its face, and its ears notably stuck up in the air, and it came down off its back. It was bushier on the top of between its shoulder blades with this cape of hair, this mane, and then it was around its shoulders, but it was so beefed up around the shoulders it had like a buffalo hump, and its head was not up like a domesticated dog would be. Its head was sloped downward, and again he used the phrase like a hyena. So I find that strikingly interesting. That's how you described what you saw as well.
And that is so true. The rear hindquarters of this animal was much more, it narrowed as it went further back in the body. The front, all the power of this animal was in the front. No doubt about it. Its front legs were thick, and I worked with 200-pound Rottweilers, and this animal's front paw was probably three times thicker than a Rottweiler's front paw. It just looked extremely strong and robust, and it moved like lightning. It was on me in a flash, and like I said, I didn't even have time to react, to hit my brakes. There were no skid marks, no nothing. This thing came out of nowhere, and boom, I hit it. It was instant, and my wife and I, we never saw it coming. So it was incredibly fast as well. And I didn't see anything else pass in front of me before it. So I didn't see like a rabbit run by or a squirrel or like it was chasing something. It looked like it was dead set on going somewhere, and didn't matter what was in front of it. Like it was on a mission.
Well, you said something interesting too earlier, that you could tell being around dogs a lot, and big dogs, that it's interesting that in biology, when you're studying the anatomy of animals, usually structure dictates function, and function dictates structure. And with what you described as far as the choppers it had, so to speak, that its mission, it was a meat eater. It's not a plant eater, it's a meat eater.
Oh yeah. I would go even beyond that, and I would just call it was a killer. It looked like it was designed to do one thing, and that's just kill. It was a full-on predator. There's no question about that. And I just didn't know what kind. But it was something that didn't fit, typical guys, I understand the difference. I've been married a long time, and I understand the difference between males and females and the way we think and the way we feel and things like that. And it's not my first rodeo. And us guys were such logical, analytical. I just open up this file cabinet and pull out this file, and that's where this goes. And I'm okay with that. Close the door, forget about it. But this thing, I didn't have a file to put it in. I'd never seen one. I didn't know what it was. I was kind of at a loss. And so I didn't feel comfortable telling anybody else about it because I didn't have an answer. And I also felt bad for hitting it and not helping it. But once I realized how dangerous this thing was, that went right out the window. I'm not here to assist it. I'm here to make sure that me and my wife are going to be safe, and we're getting out of Dodge here. We're out of here.
Absolutely. I don't think anybody can blame you in the least after walking around the car and seeing that and being taken back, because your mind is trying to wrap itself around what you know versus what you're seeing, and it's not correlating to anything. And so you instantly went into this fear, something's not right here. So I don't blame you. I don't think anyone can blame you for doing that.
I felt that if I would have had a gun with me in the car, I would have gone and got it once I saw this thing. There was nothing between me and this animal. If it would have jumped up, I'm sure it would have had revenge on its mind. That's the feeling I got. And so for that reason alone, I was like, I have no way to protect myself. I'm very vulnerable. And I think it kind of changed. I'm 59 now. This was 21 years ago. It's definitely changed the way I behave about security. My wife actually thinks I'm kind of anal about it, but I don't think I am.